welcome. We're now halfway through this webinar series. We have done 5 out of the 9 that we said we would do between now and Christmas. And we've been really enjoying it, actually. Some real technical challenges. And I hope you're not finding too many technical challenges at your end. But we're very pleased to have you here for this 5th webinar. Now, this one is on courageous conversations. And it's one that follows up from the webinar we did 2 weeks ago, where we were talking about enforcing repairs. And if you're at that webinar, you will recall that we had Jim Bold from TC Young and we had Graham Boyack from Scottish Mediation. And both of them were emphasising just how important it is to talk to people before you actually think about taking enforcement action. But we all know that's not easy. So the webinar we've got today is going to give you some techniques for holding those difficult conversations. And our trainer, Brian, who you saw just now, has done a session already with 3 volunteers. Those volunteers were Sarah, Don and Doug, and we'd just like to thank them a lot for taking part in that session. Sadly, I don't think they can be with us this afternoon. It would have been interesting to hear whether they'd actually used any of these techniques yet to deal with some of the difficult problems that they've got. So we'll get in, we videoed that even. Gosh, I must keep up to date with things. And we're going to play that very shortly. But I would just like to remind you about some of the things you can do in these sessions. So firstly, you'll see there's a chat panel. It would be lovely if you all popped on and said hi and said who you were and where you were from, and just keep us posted what you're thinking about things here. And if you've got any technical problems, go on the chat as well, because Petra is behind the scenes and she is sorting everything. She's brilliant. She's wonderful. We couldn't do this without her. You'll also see there's a Q&A. Now, we'd really like you to put in your questions at the Q&A and we'll pick those up at the end, and Brian and I will both come back in and try and sort out some of the questions that you've got. And that'll be in about 40 minutes. And you'll also see in the handouts, we put Brian's presentation there. So if you'd like to download that handout and follow it as Brian's going through things, please do. Now, as ever, we will be recording this session and we will have the session put up online sometime tomorrow, and you're very welcome to come and watch it again. In fact, I would advise it. I have watched this video twice now, and every time I see it, I take something more out of it. So I do encourage you to come back and just keep watching this. I just know how difficult these conversations are going to be. And finally, just before we start the video, which I know Petra will be lining up just now, I know some of you are letting agents or in other professions where you'd like to get a CPD certificate. We've had a few admin problems with that, but do let us know if you want one, and we will make sure somehow or other that we get one to you in due course. So just contact us, info@underoneroof.scot. So Petra, how are we doing with the recording? Are we ready to go yet?
It's those conversations that you don't want to have because you know it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation. People are going to feel threatened, they're possibly going to argue back. So that's the type of conversations that I'm going to tonight hopefully help you with. So what I'm trying to achieve in the next hour is that you can recognise how to hold those difficult conversations that address a variety of different issues, that you can identify trigger points, and we'll talk about impulse control. It's when somebody says something that gets your hackles up, how do you deal with that? And also we'll look at using conversation and collaboration to help resolve differences in matters of opinion. And finally, to reduce the occurrences of conflict, and I'm going to introduce you to what I call, it's my own model, it's a sugar model, and it's in the questioning technique that goes with that. So any conversation, is purely a communication, and most people enjoy conversation. But for it to be effective, it has to have basically 3 parts to it. There's the verbal element, the vocal, and the visual. Now, unfortunately, they don't split themselves equally. The verbal, that's the words that we use, only account for 7% of an effective communication. The vocal is the tone that we put on those words. And the visual is the body language, what you actually see as the person delivers the message. So I always say any crucial conversation, any courageous conversation, always start with the end in mind. Because what people see plus what they hear will equate to how emotionally they feel about it. And that will directly relate to the action that they take. So I start with the end in mind. I think, what action do I want people to take? So if I think, what action do I want them to take, then how must I make them feel? And I will make them feel that through what they hear me say, plus what they see me look like as I deliver the message. So start with the end in mind. But I believe that, because I stood up on my feet for 18 years talking to people, I'm always conscious at the level they are listening to me on. And I've actually got a name for them. You know, the bottom level of listening, I call it ignoring me. What would be the giveaway signs that I think somebody's ignoring me here? What do I look out and see that I think somebody's ignoring me? What do you think?
Looking away.
Absolutely, Sarah. That's the number one giveaway clue. See, if I'm in a room with a window, yeah, and people are looking at, oh, there's another pigeon. You know. Now, the second level of listening, I call that pretending. What are people doing when they're pretending to listen? Well, what they're basically doing is they're nodding at me all the time. Yeah, their heads are constantly nodding. This time they're looking at me, but they're looking a million miles through me, and they're just nodding. Then the third level is selective listening. Now, selective listening is they'll dip into things that they think, I'm going to have to know this, or I'm going to actually have to do this, or I'm interested in this part of it. And then the fourth one is active listening. How can you tell when somebody's actively listening to you? What do they do?
There'll be just a sense of engagement.
They engage with you. You're right, Douglas. They ask questions, they answer questions, yeah. However, if you're going to have a crucial conversation, active listening isn't good enough. There's another level you have to go to. And I call that empathic listening. Because when you're actively listening, what you're basically doing is you're listening with the intention of replying. So halfway through the conversation, you'll think, okay, I know where you're coming from. And when you go quiet, I'm going to say this. So we start to compose the reply in our head. We end up, we're listening to ourselves rather than the other person. And the other person soon recognizes that you've stopped listening to them. So they go quiet, you hear the silence and you jump in. Well, if I was you, I would do this. But empathic listening is listening not just to the words that they're saying, but you're listening to, why are they telling me this? And how do they feel about this? And as a coach, in a 90-minute coaching session, that's the level I have to be at. And it's actually more tiring being at that level doing a coaching session than standing up on my feet for 4 or 5 hours delivering training. So 5 different levels of listening. Are you up for a challenge that just checks where you are on that ladder? Yes, Brian. Yeah. You'll say no, Brian. Okay, we'll base it on what I say in the next 15 seconds. Is that fair enough?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Pat and Chris work for ITS Limited. They're in the office talking about the football match they'd been to the previous evening. Pat supports Dundee and Chris supports Dundee United. The telephone rings and Chris takes the call. It's from Sam from head office. Sam wants to know when the best time will be to deliver some new PCs. Chris says they should be delivered to the depot and not the offices. Okay, with your pen, give yourself 1 to 8 on your note paper. I'm going to give you 8 statements, and I want you to put a T if it's true, F if it's false, and II if there's insufficient information to determine whether the statement is true or false. Okay, so statement number 1. The 2 men were talking about a football match. Statement number 2. The football match was between Dundee and Dundee United. Statement number 3. Chris took the call from Sam. Statement number 4. Pat works at head office. Statement number 5. Chris works in the depot. Statement number 6. The desks are to be delivered to the offices. Statement number 7. Sam will deliver the desks. And statement number 8. Chris and Pat work for TIS Limited. Okay, how do you think you got on? You got all 8? Maybe his eye.
Progressively worse.
Okay, let's go through them now. Statement number one, the two men were talking about a football match. What do you put?
I'm watching it.
Insufficient information. The statement, the two men were talking about a football match. Pat and Chris could be male or female. So the statement is the two men. Did you assume that they were just men?
Yes.
Yes.
How often do you think we make assumptions during the working day? Much more than we ever give credit for, yeah. Statement number two, the football match was between Dundee and Dundee United.
That was definitely true.
True.
No, we told you who they supported, but not who played in the match day.
Oh, no.
So that's what's called an erroneous link. We've linked some things and we've not verified it yet. Yeah. Statement three. Chris took the call from Sam. It's true, yes, it's true. Statement number four. Pat works at head office. It's insufficient information. Statement five. Chris works in the depot. Insufficient information. Statement six. The desks are to be delivered to the offices.
Definitely false.
Why?
Because they would be delivered to the depot.
No, it
And
was
they're not
PCs we
desks,
talked about.
Keys or something.
Yeah, it was PCs we said. But we
Uh-huh.
didn't say no
Yeah.
desks, so insufficient information. Statement seven, Sam will deliver the desks. Insufficient information. Statement eight, Chris and Pat work for TIS Limited. It was false, it was ITS Limited. Anytime that you have a conversation with someone that you want them to remember, because that was only 15 seconds, and I can guarantee that your crucial conversation will be longer than 15 seconds. So if you want people to remember what you said, your communication has got to be proper. Yeah. Now, I know you're looking at it thinking they can't spell, but it's an acronym for, the P stands for primacy. Now, the rule of primacy says that if you get 5 or 6 things to tell a group of people, 30% will remember the first thing that you say. So if you've got 5 or 6 things to tell a group of people, when should you tell them the most important? Tell them at first, because 30% of people will remember that. The rule of recency says if you get 5 or 6 things to tell a group of people, 30% of them will remember the last thing you tell them before they leave the room. So if you get 5 or 6 things to tell them, when should you tell them the most important?
At the end.
Tell them at the beginning and remind them again at the end, because in effect, you've got them up to 60% remembering your key message. Now you can actually move it to 90% by repeating it 3 times. You've probably heard the old saying, tell them what you're going to tell them what you've told them. It's a bit like the 10 o'clock news. Dying, what do you get at the very start of the news?
Bullet point.
You get the headlines, yeah. Then they give you the main story, and what do you get at the end of the news? You get a summary, yeah. That's them telling you it 3 times because that's the stories they want you to remember that night. If you don't use those 3 rules, which you should, you can still make it memorable, but you're going to have to work hard to make it outstanding. Something big, something bold, something brilliant, something that really sticks in their mind. And also, people will remember things that are addressed to them on a personal basis. So where possible, make the message personal. And all the great memory feats right across the world are all done through association, be it visual or verbal. So if you can link it to something that they already know or they already do, there'll be more chance that they can recall it. So we're talking about body language, like how you look as you deliver the message. So positive and negative body language. Give me an example of something that would be classed as positive body language.
Smiling.
Smile, absolutely, Douglas. And something that would be classed as a negative body language element.
Crossed arms.
Crossed arms, yeah, perfect. So we can recognise positive body language. We should focus on the person. We should lean slightly forward because it helps us listen and it looks like we're listening as well. We should maintain eye contact but don't stare. Nod if it's appropriate. and as Douglas said, smile as well. And adopt an open posture. Negative body language would be averting our gaze, sitting back with arms folded, tapping fingers, fiddling with paper clips or pens, having a frown on our face, or having a glazed facial expression, as we call it in Scotland, looking glaikit. Yeah. Now I'm waiting for Gok Wan to come to Scotland to do how to look good glaikit. I've got lots of candidates for him for that. So, in order to remember that part and parcel of any conversation is we should listen as much as we speak. We've got to look interested, we've got to inquire, stay on target by asking good questions, test our understanding, evaluate the message that we receive, and neutralise our feelings. Yeah. Okay, so body language, the majority of it come from facial coding, and even people born blind from birth, when they're disgusted, their face will show disgust. It's that hardwired in us. Yeah, so we can recognise easily 6 basic facial codes. So what I'm going to ask you to do on your piece of paper is you've got numbers 1 to 6, rank the picture against either disgust, anger, fear, happiness, surprise, and sadness. So do all 6. There's only 1 picture for each facial code. Okay, let's take them one at a time then. So number 1 is, what do we think?
Angry.
Yeah, anger. Yeah. Now, not only can we recognise the facial code, we can actually recognise whether it's real or false. What do you think with this one? Is this real or false? Is this person really angry?
He seems to be smiling at the same time. So.
Yeah, you're right, Douglas. Yeah, and plus, when you are angry, do you go looking for paper to eat? Do you? No, I don't think so. Number 2, or what did you put it down as?
Sadness.
Sadness, yeah. Now, is it real or false?
False.
What gives it away as being false?
Well, because they look like they could laugh at any minute.
Yeah, and what about their actual facial expression? There's
Okay.
over protruding lips.
Oh, it's over exaggerated.
Over exaggerated. Number 3, disgust. Real or false? Surprise, yeah. And we'll take it as false since it's Rowan Atkinson. Number 5.
Fear.
Fear, yeah. Real or false? It's a difficult one to tell, isn't it, this one?
Sure.
Yeah, except a couple of months, or a couple of years back now, actually. Number 6.
Happy.
Happy. Is that real or false? It's real.
It's true, I would say.
Yeah. Smiles actually are the easiest to tell whether they're real or false. What happens is the true smiles, the upper eyelid slightly droops and the skin under the eye gathers upwards. The corners of the mouth move up and out as well. So there's a lot going on when it's a real smile. Social smiles, what's missing is the movement around the eyes that would cause them to twinkle or gleam. Yeah. So be conscious of not only your body language, but particularly your facial coding when you're having a crucial conversation. Okay, I'm going to talk to you now about map of the world. This is how you see things, how you perceive them. And everybody's map of the world is slightly different, and I'll explain why. So we gain our map of the world through our senses. So our sight, our touch, taste, smell, and what we hear. And we're bombarded with thousands of these a day. But as they come in, we put them through our own filters. Our state of mind, our state of health is a filter. Our experience of similar things to date, and the values that we've had and grown up with, and you know, the part and parcel of us. So as these, you know, what we're gaining through our senses come through our filters, we can either choose to delete it. We don't want to remember it, we want to forget it as quickly as possible. Or we put a slight twist on it, we see it maybe with rose-coloured tinted glasses, and we distort it. Or we just generalise it, it goes into the pot with all the other types of experience we've had. So no matter how we handle them, we get that map of the world that is what we see. Once we've got our map of the world, we're in an altered state. We feel differently about it at this point in time. And then that leads to behaviour. So basically, everything that we see, touch, smell, taste, goes through our filters, and we uniquely have a map of the world that is our version of events, and then we behave according to our version of events. But I say everybody's got a different map of the world. And that's why people see things differently from us. So when events happen, it tends to trigger an emotion, which leads to behaviour. So that's basically what map of the world was saying. So antecedents, which is just a fancy word for events. So such as, conversations, meetings, gatherings, etc. We have a behaviour. Now, all behaviours that are either seen or heard have consequences. So how you act during that conversation will have its consequences. But it's not quite as simple as just the antecedent leading to behaviour. There's more steps actually involved. As soon as somebody does something or says something, we have an inner thought about it. We attach an emotion, and then we behave, and that has consequences. Now, that's fine if that inner thought is a positive inner thought. We feel good about this. But if it's negative, it's going to lead to negative emotions, negative behaviour, and negative consequences. So what I'm going to explain now is something I came across when I studied coaching down at Oxford School of Coaching and Mentoring. It's called impulse control. And probably the biggest worst case that I can think of where someone didn't introduce impulse control was, do you remember Mike Tyson biting off Evander Holyfield's ear?
Mhm.
Boxing ring, yeah. Most people remember that. What a lot of people don't remember or know of is that 12 months prior to that event, both fighters were in the ring, and it was round 6. Mike Tyson was up in points when Evander Holyfield deliberately headbutted him. It was a good Glasgow kiss. It wasn't just a brush of heads. Good Glasgow kiss. And Mike Tyson lost temporary sight for about 20 seconds, which was enough time for Evander Holyfield to knock him out. So Evander Holyfield won the title that night and won the prize money. Now, Mike Tyson had 12 months to think about that. They're back in the ring that night, and again, Evander Holyfield deliberately headbutts him. So if we refer back to what do you think Mike's inner thought was at that point in time when Evander Holyfield deliberately headbutted him again? What do you think his inner thought was?
I'm going to lose.
Absolutely, Don. He thought, he's going to do this to me again. He did it last year. I'm going to lose this fight again. I'm going to lose the belt. I'm going to lose the prize money, the title. So he had a negative inner thought about it, which led to a negative emotion, which led to the biting of the ear. Now, it's almost like, if you've got a negative thought, impulse control is, let's say, count to 10. There's no count to 10, Mike, and make sure you get his whole ear in the mouth. It's count to 10 and actually have a different inner thought. And I came across this. I came back from that course and I thought, I do have negative inner thoughts. So I was able to change that negative inner thought to a positive inner thought. And about 99% of the time, I still can. Occasionally, I can't find a positive in it. But when somebody says something in a crucial conversation that gets your hackles up, you have to have impulse control enough to be able to hear them out and not have a negative inner thought and a negative emotion and negative behaviour. So, how to have a crucial conversation. So we're going to introduce the sugar model here. Now, that's not making it a little bit sweeter. This is what it's not about. It's giving you a route map through a crucial conversation. Yeah. So the sugar stands for situation, understanding, generating ideas and options, agreeing the action, and review. So let's go through them individually. So the situation. When I have to have a crucial conversation with someone, actually I've got a sugar sheet that I'll go and write out every single time I'm going to have a crucial conversation with someone. I'll write out, how am I going to explain the situation to them? I'll try to keep the explanation short, but I'll have to let them know exactly how I see it, what's my map of the world, and how I feel about it. So I'll write down exactly how I'm going to explain the situation to them. After I've explained what the situation, what I want to talk to you about, I have to understand what your map of the world is, how you see things. So I have to allow others to have their say. I have to get what your view is, what your map of the world of the same event is. And I've got to understand how you feel as well. The challenge is to say, am I listening right at the very top level? Am I listening empathically? And what else do I need to know to better understand how you see it? Because if you can see how the other person sees it, you don't necessarily have to agree with them. But if you can see how they see it, then you can get them to see it differently. and get them to do something differently. Generating ideas, I want them to come up with solutions. I'll have solutions on my own, but I prefer that they come up with them. What's the reason behind me wanting them to come up with the solutions? Why is it better that they come up with the solutions?
Well, they're more likely to go with their own ideas. So.
Absolutely, Douglas. Yeah. If they plan the battle, they don't battle the plan. If they come up with the idea, they're more likely to follow it. They're more likely to carry it out. If I give them an idea that they don't want to do, it's never going to get done, no matter how persistent I am. So I'll ask them, what are the possible solutions? What are the options? What are their ideas? I'll actually really challenge them to come up with as many ideas as possible, because I'm a person that believes, you know, if you want good ideas, just get lots of ideas. You throw away the bad ones, keep the good ones and embellish them. And I'll ask them if I'll push them to come up with maybe 5 or 6 or 7 possible options and ideas. And I'll ask them, what one interests you most? Which one are you more likely to carry out? What one do you think is a bigger gain? And then the action, what I want to know is the 3 W's. Who is going to do what and when? And then I just need to check that we're both on the same page with that. Yeah, that we both agree. And then with the review, when should we set a review date to make sure that what we've agreed to do has been successful? Now, setting the review date, it depends on the situation, and it depends on the individual that I'm dealing with who should set the review date. I like them to set the review date, but it has to be within parameters that I can work with. So let's use the sugar model then. I'll give you a scenario so this is I call this one the Sarah scenario. So I seen it from my point of view, but what happened is Sarah had been with my own company just 3 months at this point in time when this happened a number of years ago. A long-term client actually called me to say that Sarah turned up late for delivering training twice in the last week. So he explained to me that he had 12 of his top people in that room waiting for the training to start, and Sarah was about an hour late each time. So he wasn't happy. Other support information that you should know was, at that time, Sarah was a youngish single mother. She was a good, enthusiastic trainer, and I liked her. She lived at that time with her recently retired parents, both doctors, and both had cars. And she only worked the last 2 weekends as a conference facilitator, which she was paid for. Yeah. So, how would you have described the situation to Sarah? Well, I'll tell you how I describe it, because a lot of people think, okay, I'll ask Sarah to come and see me and I'll start the conversation with, okay, you were on holiday a couple of weeks ago. How did the holiday go? How's the kid getting on? No, don't ease in. You know, they call it sort of dancing around. Sarah, I've had a call from this client to say that you've been late twice in the last 2 weeks. I need to address that. So I tell her up front exactly what we're going to talk about. There's no dancing around it. How do I check my understanding? I've got to ask Sarah, why has that happened, Sarah? Can you enlighten me as to why you've been late? Because I can't just go right into the solution and then Sarah floors me with why that's happened, takes the legs out from under me and I'm left. So I have to say, Sarah, tell me why that's happened. And at that point in time, she tells me that her car is off the road. It's needing a major engine overhaul, and it'll be off for several months probably because it's really important. So, okay, I know why it's happened now, but let's generate some ideas and options. So ask Sarah, how do you make sure that you're not late in the next couple of months for the clients that have already got you booked? What do you think she'd come up with? If you were in her situation, what options would you give me that you could ensure that you were at the clients in time for the training?
Borrow one of our parents' cars.
Borrow one of our parents' cars. Yeah, that's one, Douglas. Yeah, look for another one.
Start the meeting an hour later.
Go schedule the meetings for an hour later to make sure you're there on time. Yeah, second one, give me a third.
Leave an hour earlier.
Yeah, leave an hour earlier. Yeah. Fourth.
Get the parents to take the kid to school if that's the issue.
Get the parents to get to school. Yeah. 5, hire a car. 6.
Get you to hire a car.
Yeah. Get me, hire a car, you got to be kidding, Sarah. Yeah. So I get her to come, she come up with about 7, and I say to her, okay, which one interests you most? She says, actually, hire the car. I'll hire a car. So what are you going to do, Sarah, when you leave this meeting? She says, I'm going to go on the internet just now, I'm going to check out car hire, and I'll get it ordered for tomorrow. Okay. So who then should set the review date to see if the hire of the car is working?
I would have thought you.
It's a major client of mine. I'm going to say, tell you what, Sarah, we'll check come Wednesday if that's working okay, because you've got Monday, Tuesday, you're out 4 days next week training, but Wednesday we'll have this conversation just to make sure it's working. Yeah. So we have that conversation. Now, unfortunately, Sarah does a Sarah. So the first thing that Sarah does is when I tell her a client has phoned and they've told me you've been late twice by an hour, she goes into shock. Oh my goodness, I didn't think that client would actually phone Brian. I'm going to be sacked. Now, the next question I say is, just tell me why that happened, Sarah. I need to understand why it's happened. She actually goes into anger. So she recognises, I'm not getting sacked for this. And he forgets that I'm a single parent. He forgets that I've not got a company car like him. Yeah, so there's a bit of anger comes in there. So she can only be angry with me for certain things, because at the end of the day, we're a good company, we're a good employer. So she goes into a period of rationalisation where, in Sarah's mind, she's building up all the pros and cons of working for Class 1 consultants. Oh, they're good payers, but don't get a company car's a negative. There's a future here for me, but I'm not yet promoted. So she's doing all that. Now, at that point in time, if I think where I need to get her to is acceptance that no matter what her terms and conditions in the company, she's still responsible for being in front of the client when she should be, and ready and willing to go at the time that she agreed. She has to come to acceptance that that is her responsibility. But if she's hanging about in the sort of anger rationalisation phase, I'll say, look, Sarah, I'll tell you what, it's 5 o'clock just now, go home and have a think about it, hoping that extra time that she'll come to acceptance that no matter that I've not got a company car, I'm paid well enough, I should be at the client in time. So you need to get her to acceptance. And I can give you an example that says the first time I had that conversation, that actual conversation, Sarah did go through shock, anger, rationalisation. I had to take time out, send her home, come back in the next day before she got to acceptance. See if tomorrow I was to have a crucial conversation with Sarah, because I keep this so transparent for people, this sugar model is transparent. As soon as I said to Sarah, Sarah, this is a situation as I see it, and I describe it to her, she will immediately give me the understanding of this is why it happened. And these are the several options that I've got that I'm thinking about that will solve this problem. And in fact, I'm going to go with this option. This is the best option. And when I leave this room, Brian, I'm going to do that. And I'll tell you what, we'll have a review date come Monday. She actually takes ownership of it, and the monkey's off my back. Sarah will run with it because she knows that I use the sugar model every single time I've got to have a conversation with somebody that's going to be a bit crucial. So we said we'd cover closed types of questions as well that would ask to maybe check my understanding and make sure that the action that we've agreed is going to happen. Yeah. So you'll know what closed questions are, don't you? The questions that we only want a yes or no answer for. Now, as human beings, we ask an inordinate amount of closed questions, but they just give us yes or no answers. So we have to ask more open questions. We'll cover probing questions, hypothesizing questions, justifying questions, summarizing questions, and comparison questions. So there's a whole toolbox of questions. So let's go through them. So closed questions. They're there to check understanding. It's either a yes or a no answer we're looking for. So if we want to clarify a point, Sarah, are you agreed to go with option 1? We'd use that as a closed question for a yes or a no answer. But they're primarily to verify information. Yeah, we use them to verify that the information is accurate. They'll also help you gain commitment. So how committed are you to that, Sarah? Is it a definite yes or a no? So we're looking for. Open questions are there to help us get more information on a matter that we need more information on. But they also help us to explore other ideas. They'll help us elicit people's opinions and uncover needs that we don't know about. So open questions are absolutely vital to ask. Normally started with who, what, where, why, and how. Probing questions. Probing questions you're going to ask if you've asked an open question, but you've not got enough information yet. So you'll need more information, you ask a probing question. So for example, you can ask a probing question starting with, so what else did you know about that? Or what happens when this goes ahead? What do you put that down to? What made you think about that? It's just, we're looking for more information than what's been provided. Hypothesizing questions. These are questions that begin normally with the words, what if? And I'll use them to introduce new ideas, alternatives, or options. Or if someone has chosen an option that I don't think is going to work, then I'll ask normally a hypothesizing question. Because if somebody comes up with an option that I don't think is going to work, the last thing I can do is reject that option. Because if I do that, they will never come up with another option again for the fear of being rejected. Now, if they come up with that option and I think that's not going to work, I know that for a fact it's not going to work, I still have to be an advocate angel for that option. I have to ask loads of positive questions in order that they get to the point that I think this is where it falls over and they're going to realise that. But I'm surprised at how often people find a way around it, over it, under, that I never saw. So I'll be an advocate angel for the option that they choose. But if I don't think it's the right option, I'll ask enough hypothesizing questions to get them to the point that I think this is where it all falls down. But as I say, I'm often surprised how people have thought about that and they've got a way around it. You can also use them to challenge something that the other person has said without it causing offence. So you can use a what if, a hypothesizing statement, which actually doesn't challenge them, it just challenges thinking. Justifying questions. These questions can be used to ask the other person to justify their statements. Typically, I would use, how would you explain how you've come up with that? They can be helpful when you've already established a dialogue of ideas where this kind of challenge can be appropriate. Otherwise, it can actually sound intimidating to ask a justifying question, and at times it can provide them a challenge that they don't like. Yeah. Summarising questions. Asking the other person to either summarise or pull out key points from a situation or an explanation that they have given to help them think more clearly. So typically I'll say, well, right, in a nutshell, tell me what we've agreed to so far. So for example, it encourages clarity and their own understanding. So when you ask people to summarise, what you're doing is you're basically saying to them, tell me in your own words what you have taken from this, what your intention is. Comparison questions. So if they come up with a number of options, I can ask them to compare them. So how does option 1 compare with option 2? Yeah, it helps people develop their lateral thinking, those types of questions. And it also can be used to direct them to an aspect that they've not thought of themselves. There are certain types of questions that are best avoided. Those are leading questions, multiple questions, and open questions that start with the word why. So let's go through them. Leading questions are ones that make it so obvious what the expected answer is that the other person has no option to answer being aggressive. So when you ask a leading question, the temptation is to agree with you, because otherwise they need to contradict you. You don't really think that option 2 will work, do you? You've got to rule that one out. You're not letting them choose. Multiple questions. Ask more than one question at once, and they're confusing for the other person who doesn't know which part of the question to answer. So, and I hear it a lot. I sit in a lot of interviews as the external candidate person to make judgments, and I hear candidates getting asked a lot of multiple questions. So what do you think was happening at the time? Were you nervous? Did you want to stop? Yeah, there's so many questions that they don't know where to start answering, and they've forgotten the first one that you've asked anyway. Now, why would I say don't ask a question that starts with the word why? When somebody asks you a question that starts with the word, so why did you choose that option? How does that
Putting
come
you
in?
on the defensive.
Absolutely, Douglas, you've got it spot on there. These questions will sound critical, challenging, or intrusive. Yeah, people are they need to defend themselves. They need to justify why they've done it. For example, if you were to ask, why did you answer the question like that? You could sound disapproving. A better way of phrasing those types of questions, which begin with why, is to ask, well, tell me about, or can you identify, or share with me your thought process on, is a nice one to ask, rather than ask why, because people do feel themselves defensive on it.
Brian, can I ask a question?
Please, Don.
I can imagine many situations where you just got to cut to the chase and say, why were you late this morning?
Yes, yeah.
Sometimes you don't really want to. What you said earlier about not dancing about.
That's right, absolutely, Don. Yeah. You're right. There will be some times where a simple question, why, they don't have to feel too antagonistic about that. Yeah. Perfect timing, Don, in terms of questions. Any questions, folks, that you've got? Have you come to the session with an idea of a crucial conversation that you would either like to have or need to have?
Can I say, Brian, I have conversations frequently every day, not
Yeah.
realising that they were crucial, but now I perhaps do.
And are they successful, Don?
Yes, I just worry that I'm going to forget it all.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Do you think you do some of the things that I talked about? Do you think you do them naturally?
yes, I do, but
Yeah.
many I don't.
Yeah. If you're doing them naturally, you've probably learned from experience how to do them better.
What do you do, Brian, where you try negotiating with someone as nicely as you can, understanding their position, but you know eventually you have to get to a point that you're never going to agree with them, with what they want.
Yeah.
And I find that very difficult. You know, how you just you deal with that. You just say, look, I hear what you're saying,
Yeah.
understand, but we're just never going to agree on this.
Yeah.
Because I've got a situation like this in a property, a tenement situation.
Yeah. I think genuinely, if you do hear them out, you listen to them, you listen on that very top level, why they tell me this, how do they feel about it, and you explain to them, I can see how you see it that way, I know how you feel about it. Then that it's almost like reciprocal. The more you listen to them, the more likely they are to listen to you and empathise with you as well. Yeah. Okay, folks, it's been really nice to meet you all. Thank you very much for coming. Okay, maybe start off with quick introductions. Elaine, you're on my left-hand screen, so you want to go first, please?
Sure. I'm Elaine. I'm based in Broadferry, part of Dundee. My main issue, I have 6 properties and 2 of them in the same building, which is the tenement that I have the most issues with and the most problems. I have, there's 8 owner-occupiers and landlords, and just trying to get everybody even to a meeting is not working out. My particular problematic one has actually just put the property out for sale, so that could go through before Christmas. And the other one is another one just didn't reply to anything.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Elaine. Laura, you want to go next?
I'm in North Ayrshire in a small village. I live in a tenement block of 4 flats, and I have a half share in the 1 flat diagonally below me.
Yeah.
And then the next tenement block up, I've got a share in another flat. Right. And we've had long-term tenants in both. Interestingly, my challenge is not the tenants, it's the one pot smoking owner.
Right. Right. Okay.
It was that point. I will point out as owners that I have an issue with too.
Right. Okay. Interesting. And Lauren, please.
Yeah, so I'm Lauren. I am based in Glasgow and I work for a letting agency called Homes for Good. We also own a lot of properties through two investment companies in the agency. So we have a lot of kind of dealings with communal repairs and specifically, I think my role is dealing with landlords. So this has been really interesting to me because sometimes you have to have really difficult conversations with landlords. And that's why this was kind of intriguing to me. But yeah, that's my background.
Excellent. Thanks, Lauren. And Peyton?
Hello, I'm based in Aberdeen and I've got 6 flats, 4 in Aberdeen, and they're in a modern purpose-built block. It's approximately 20 years old. No particular problems there at all. And I've also got 2 flats in Edinburgh and Leith, and my biggest single problem there is that they've got cladding and so are subject to all these issues about modern cladding following on from Grenfell. So the issues there are that I felt that the Owners Association was very slow on the uptake to recognise this as a problem. And so I've got 1 or 2 issues concerning that, but I'm more been listening in and just taking advantage of you running the programs and listening to it rather than necessarily specifically having a problem that I want anybody to address.
Yeah, I say everybody has crucial conversations to have, whether they're about work or whether it's about your children, it's about your partner, it's about your parents. But, you know, it covers everything. And it's useful that you get used to having a crucial conversation, because we do have to have them and we should have them. And we should make a success of them as well. The more we practice the crucial conversations, the better we get at them, which is good news. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Brian Hutcheson. I've got my own company, Class 1 Consultants. I've had it for now 20 years and we do consultancy right across the UK. And I'm really glad to hear so many Scottish voices, because the majority of my business, when I was able to get to the site, was in England, Kent, Somerset, you know. And so it's good to be actually able to deliver this session in Scottish. Well, actually, I don't have a choice, but it's just nice to know that people understand you and they're not looking at you as if, what you said? So crucial conversations it's relevant to every business, and I probably delivered the course in the last 8 years across oil businesses, nuclear industry businesses. Everybody has to have crucial conversations. So it was good to deliver that. First time ever been taped doing it, so it makes you kind of nervous. And I take it you have watched the Crucial Conversations video. Yeah. So I'm happy to take your questions. You're between me and my own football team kicking off at 6 o'clock tonight, so make a good use of it. Now, the bad news is I'm not really desperate to go and see them getting beat again, you know, which has been the case for the last sort of 10 games. So anyway, and it's nice to have Peyton from Aberdeen. I spent a lot of time up in Aberdeen, both working and living, so I know the city well. It's quite a different city from the rest of the UK and certainly the rest of Scotland in terms of its employment. So it's nice to have somebody from Aberdeen. So ask away, whatever you want, whatever you need. I'm here to help. Sound like Fraser Crane there, right enough. Yeah.
I'm listening. Yeah.
Elaine, you want to go first? You want to kick us off?
Sure, why not? Last in, first to ask all the questions. Well, the biggest issue what is getting people together. So how would you initiate the conversation to get people to come to the table to a meeting?
Yeah, I find that when people are reluctant to come to a meeting, it's generally because they actually don't know what the consequences of not attending this meeting could be. So it's about putting it in a frame where it says, you know, this meeting is because, and making it something that they have to be at. That there's a need for them to be there. There's a desire for them to be there, and they're interested in being at that meeting. So
well, my ceiling falling down wasn't enough of a reason for them to come to that meeting.
So you have to put it in their terms. What's important for them?
Well, that is the issue, that I'm on the ground floor. I'm not even on the top floor. I'm the ground floor flat. And my ceiling fell down because the water came down the external render of the building, and it's the external render that's bossed, and also the gutters need fixed. Yeah. The flat above is the one I had particular issues with, that he just stopped applying. He felt that nobody was contributing to anything that he wanted done. And I can understand that, but he just, every time he put an obstacle in the way of coming along.
It's just this one individual that's not.
Yeah. Other ones just didn't reply at all. At least he initiated some conversations, but they were usually very negative, and he just refused in the end to come along. And he's leaving. The flat is selling. So if there's a new owner, then how do you approach that? Because he's the one, like, I can't do this on my own. Same with everybody else.
Yeah, I
can understand. I don't want the responsibility of it either. If I have to change the external of the building to get it repaired, it's going to affect the entire building. And it doesn't matter. I've created like whole PDFs of what sort of needs to be done in the building and how to go about it. And I like almost feel like I'm taking this on and pushing it forward and not getting anywhere. And I've tried to be really nice and kind of even sent out duty to maintain when it gets a bit much, but I still have got absolutely nothing done. And it's a year now since the ceiling fell down.
Okay, so whenever people are in the situation, there are 3 types of behaviour that you can have: assertive, aggressive, and passive.
Okay.
Yeah. So the passive person will ask politely for the person to attend.
Okay.
The aggressive person will shout and bawl at the person to attend. The assertive person gives the person a good reason to attend. They express themselves honestly and openly, but they stand up for their needs and their rights. And I think that is the case when it comes to having a crucial conversation. I think you need to be a bit more assertive.
Okay.
Okay.
Lauren, can I bust in with a
Laura, go for it.
Here, in these current times, when you can't actually host a meeting, can you then invite folk to a Zoom?
Yes.
And then maybe Elaine could do that as the host.
It is acceptable, Laura, to do that. What it does it keeps both the visual element, the vocal, and you know the tone of the language. It keeps it relevant. It's just a little bit more awkward to do, but it's well worth doing. I think out of any of the choices in today's point of view, the Zoom meeting would be good. And in fact, you're not even taking them out the comfort of their own home, so maybe people will be more willing to attend, Elaine, you know, if you want to make it a Zoom meeting. But yeah, you know, I would be more than happy for you to do a Zoom meeting on the basis of it's incorporating all 3 elements, you know, the vocal, the verbal, and the visual. Yeah. So do that, yeah. And it keeps people in contact, doesn't it? You know, if people have not seen each other for a while. Lauren, any questions?
Yeah, so I work in the finance aspect of the company, so regularly I'm having conversations with landlords about money, which I think can always be a really sensitive topic.
Sure.
And some people deal with it really well, and others are a lot more sensitive to, you know, money, talking about money, and when you have to ask them for money for certain things. I guess I just wondered if you had, you know, experience of conversations specifically relating to money, any tips? And I know it's probably something that landlords have to deal with too if you're dealing with communal repairs, and sometimes it is really difficult to ask for a large amount of money.
Yeah, it is. My background was I was an accountant for a number of years, and the definition of an outgoing accountant was one that stared at your shoes when they talked to you. You know, accountants are very, very introspective. So that didn't suit me. I got out of accountancy a good number of years ago. But people don't like particularly having conversations around money. They feel it's intrusive, and they feel that you're prying almost when you're asking for money or asking for a talk about money. But what I say, you've got to make sure that you have that conversation because it is important, but that you have it in a sensitive way. So it's a bit more of a, you tell me what the situation is, and in most instances you can come to some sort of agreement. There might be sort of some small changes that you can make that's not going to cost a lot, but you have to be open and honest when it's going to have to come as an investment from the person. They're going to have to part with some real hard-earned cash. But it's about having your reasons why you're asking for it, and making sure that you express them quite clearly. And again, just give people the reason behind it, that giving people the rationale, and getting them to sort of see it from your point of view. And another course that I deliver that a lot of this strays into is negotiation skills. And in life, you get what you negotiate, and I found that out a long time ago, is that the people who are good at negotiation, and it's a skill that can be taught. It doesn't have to come from within the person. And I've met people who have attended my course many years later, and they can always give me an instance of something they negotiated that they thought, I learned that because I was on your course. So it's nice to meet people where they go, well, the last guy I said, he told me that he'd negotiated his house and the owner had thrown in his car. I thought, that's fantastic, well done. So it is a skill, and it's a skill that not a lot of people have. And it's not just about the workplace. We have to negotiate our next home, our cars, our holidays. So it's a skill that's built into life.
I don't think I negotiated very well with my next door neighbour owner, in that I physically have been refurbishing the close, and I said, because they're on a low income, that I would do the labouring and pay for it. All I asked was that they did not put their motorcycle, which they use once a fortnight, 9 feet from our communal only main exit.
Yeah.
It disappeared for 6 months. It's now back. It's still only used once a fortnight. So I thought I'd given them a win-win situation.
Sure.
The work was done. They have 3 sheds, which they don't use.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've lost.
Okay, so when you make the original agreement, I always say get every single agreement in writing.
I didn't do that.
Because you can always refer back to it. You can come back to it.
But if I email it to them, they will not acknowledge that I sent the email.
Sure.
Yeah.
Pardon? Yes, I could do that.
Yeah. I say verbal agreements are worthless. Always get them in writing. And I would advise you to do the same.
Well, after going on Annie's courses and webinars, we have to get the gutters cleaned. We have a problem with a leaky downpipe. But I've said to the maintenance person who's done it for years, could you please give me it in writing so that I can circulate? I mean, it's roughly the same each year, but I will go through the motions, because hopefully I have now learned a bit about missing shares, that if they don't pay, our council does missing shares. So that then becomes a route open so that the other 3 flats don't have to subsidise it.
Sure, yeah, of course, yeah.
No, but that's a valid point. Just get it in writing.
As they always get it in writing. When I've been out in classroom training, and we do sort of short activities about negotiating, and I let them maybe do 2 or 3, and then I say, right, refer back to what you agreed with that person on the first exercise, and you get 2 different interpretations of what was agreed, purely because nobody's written it down. And especially the longer the conversation goes on, the more that's, no, I never said that. No, I didn't agree to that. You've got to get it in writing at the time, because you can refer
That
back.
doesn't help Lauren's point on finances, because it's sort of got off piste, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Peyton, anything from yourself?
No, not specifically. As I said earlier, as much as anything, I enjoyed your presentation of a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And as you've alluded to, it's applicable not just in this context of housing, but in terms of negotiation, across a whole spectrum of activities. And again, as you were saying, I think, if you use negotiation in its wider context, the whole of life is negotiation, whether it be from, going into the shops and or having a restaurant and you're not being happy with something that's on the plate. Yeah. So you can view the whole of life as a negotiation. And just to put it in a little bit of context, again, I was interested in what you're saying, because before I retired, I was in human resources for many years and used to do negotiation with trade unions when they were far more prevalent than they have been in the last 20 years, or do I mean 30. As I say, I don't have a specific issue, really. Yes, I've got a problem which I'd spoken to Annie about probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, but it's more to do with this cladding issue in the properties that I've got in Edinburgh, and I really want to kind of get the Owners Association more on board, but because I'm here in Aberdeen and there in Edinburgh, it just presents additional difficulties. Yeah. But no, as I say, it's more I'm not on here because I've got a specific issue.
Sure.
Because I feel I want to always improve my negotiation skills in the broadest terms, really.
Yeah, thanks, Peyton. Thanks for that. Yeah. Okay, Elaine, Lauren.
Yeah, I might just, it's probably kind of going off of Elaine's last question, in terms of people who are difficult to engage with.
Yeah.
But I just thought it would be good to expand on that a little bit, because I feel like that's a problem that a lot of people in the property industry come across. Yeah. Specifically with us, if we have landlords who are, say, overseas.
Yeah.
Even other owners, things like that. Do you have any specific tips on actually getting people to engage with you in something that may not be of that much importance to them?
I would encourage lots of engagement, but non-contentious issues, because if people talk to other people that they like and that they know, and if you can initiate conversations on pleasant stuff, things that that are non-contentious, non-money related, it builds up that rapport, which is important for people just to talk and feel comfortable with each other. When it's only ever contentious issues on money, then people will be reluctant to talk because they don't know you, they're not comfortable with you. So I tend to get people to ask lots of just general questions that people would be quite happy. And the thing is, people, in my experience, people prefer talking to listening. Yeah, where if you're asked a question of interest that's something about yourself that's not evasive, then people are quite willing to share with you. And the more that they share with you, the more chance that you'll get a commonality with them. Oh, you've seen that film, or you like that dish, or you've read that book. When I get people in classrooms, 20 of them, I'll split them up, find a commonality with everybody. And you can generally do it in 10 minutes. And it has to be a case of, right, once you've found a commonality, you've both seen this film, films are out, you need to have a different topic. And they generally conclude it, and it proves to me that if you work hard enough, you ask enough questions, you'll find something that the other person and you have in common, and that creates that sort of bond and that rapport. And you tend to remember, especially if you go to the bother of remembering what the commonality was, or knowing that they were going to see such and such a film or such and such a play, and you just bring that up in conversation. It's almost like you're appealing to their ego. You've remembered something about them. So as a landlord, I would see a key part of my job is to get to know my clients, not overly, but just enough that I've built some sort of bridge there that we've both got a commonality over. Do you do that with people?
Well,
you do it in general with friends, probably.
Well, can I intercept there? Just that's great, and I spend in my properties. I do them up myself, so I do the painting and the gutting and the manage it all, and so I'm around and I meet the neighbours, and I always make a point of speaking to all the neighbours and knocking on the doors, which is fine. But the issue I have is the ones I never see, and even if I stayed in the building, because my daughter's there now, they're never around. Their emails are like, don't reply to this address. That is it. Okay, how do I get that information? And how do I find a commonality when I can't even get a communication?
Yeah, take every opportunity, Elaine, to make it happen. It only needs a slight sort of thawing for people to actually recognise that you are human. You've got if you can get something in common, or something about them, they know something about you as well, and to be seen.
I mean, I don't even put Christmas cards in on, but even I don't live there, but I put Christmas cards in the doors and I knock, and I try to be the friendly neighbour landlord, so that I know the people, so that I can do that, so that if I need something fixed, I can help. But
that's the sort of things I would encourage you to do. Yeah.
Like wall here.
Yeah.
Just so what is the opening gambit? Do you if you actually get into the table, do you have to run and get to know you activity?
No, as I say, I'll always consider that you can get to know people and get them to know you by really talking to them. But when you talk to them, you got to really listen to them. And it's back to the what I said in the video was, there's different levels of listening. And too many people just pay lip service to listening. It's like, okay, I'm listening to you, but I'm really like thinking what I'm going to say next. And people recognise that you're not listening to them, and they don't bond. So it's a real challenge for people. And I only really got to the stage where when I went through coaching at Oxford School of Coaching and Mentoring, and we spent an entire day just on listening, and I thought, what's the point of that? But it was a really cathartic day for me, because I actually recognised that I don't listen, particularly to my own boys. I'm too busy telling them what not to do, or how they've done it wrong. And listening is a real challenge for people. And I still find it hard today to at times really listen to people and get on their wavelength, because there's something just about being on people's wavelength, because within 30 seconds of meeting somebody, if they're talking and you've not clicked with them, there's a different stream that they're talking in. They might be talking in visual language, you talking like kinesthetic language. And at times I do it now as part of my coaching. I try to pick up on, if they're saying, I can see the bigger picture, I'm thinking, right, they're a person who visually sees the world. Therefore, I've got to adapt my language to actually speak in the same stream. And if I can get the same stream as them, then we go on a bit better and we make a connection. But it's difficult to do, especially when you're not getting a chance to see people in the first place.
Communicate, just like nothing. Even if you're not good, even if you're in the building, like, don't see them. Nobody ever sees them.
Did you? Obviously not these days, but did you previously make social opportunities? Yeah.
I did initially when I first moved in. He was doing up the flat next door, and then he just like vanished off the face of the earth, and rented it out, and then he's moved in. But yeah, how do you?
Yeah, It's a challenge. You know, I work with a lot of estate orderlies and housing associations, and I can tell like what estate orderlies have got to know the tenants and which haven't, because it's normally the ones that have got a problem that haven't got to know the tenants. But the ones who actually have got a good ear to the ground, they know the people, and they get on well with the people, they're generally the best at the job. But it's not a skill that you can hammer into anyone. And last week I took anti-bribery and fraud and corruption in housing associations for a couple of housing associations in Scotland. And I'd done lots of research on it, and I was actually quite surprised how much fraud there is goes on in social housing. And it's a difficult one for people to deal with. And again, they've got to have the courage to have the conversation with individuals. Laura?
Well, my conversation is not with tenants, as I say, it's with an owner.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that makes a difference being an owner as opposed to a tenant? Or
yes, because this owner inherited the flat from her mother, who didn't really want to speak to you and cold-shouldered you. I think it stems from the fact that initially I rented out my flat for 2 years and then I moved in myself. She was a single mother with 2 kids with not a lot of money. I had perhaps a nicer lifestyle. So, but as far as the young lady's concerned now, it's her property. She can do whatever she likes. She can run a smithy in the garden, park the motorbike.
What's a smithy, Laura? I'm desperate to know what's happening in that garden.
It's all right. It's not a shabeen. Grinding and metalwork. A smithy.
What?
You know. Yes.
Really?
Yes. That's why I've gone to the land registry to see if
right?
That we've got, you know, we've got all these sheds now in the garden, and looking at the language used in some of the deeds, I don't think that's on. They have a dog that has ruined the common green. We've always had dogs in the property with no gate. Mm-hmm. So we've just never let our dog mess in the garden. Yeah. We now have burn marks all over the drying green, which, as you know, Brian, the drying green is actually where you used to put your tea towels on the green to bleach them. We can't do that because of the urine from the dog.
So is it, I mean, the only experience I had of something similar was when I lived in Bearsden, and I lived in a flat in Bearsden, and that there was actually something written in to the lease that says that you couldn't allow your dog to wet that area.
Well, our tenements are 1901, so there's nothing in the burdens that I've read so far that mention pets on the common green. I haven't looked at yet, but I will do, because I have been prompted by the webinar to look at the Tenement Act.
Yeah, I would think
there might be something there that I can fall back on. Yeah. But because I want to continue living here, I don't want a war with this neighbour. No. We shut up. We've now spent nearly £1,000 on the flat below to try and plug up any air holes. It's lath and plaster walls. We've got chimney sheets. We've done seal all the light fittings. We've been boxing in. We've gone to £1,000 worth of expense to try and stop the smell of pot coming through to the ground floor.
Wow.
So, you know, it's not that I'm not, and I haven't asked them to pay for anything, I've just zipped it. Mm-hmm. I asked them to stop sanding because they do crafts on floors with no carpets, because the wooden floors that we have are not conducive to being bare. You actually have to pack the floorboards, because the sand sets off the smoke detectors.
Sure.
So, and we don't want to lose our tenant, and we did not have this problem for 8 years of the tenancy. Yeah, it's a recent problem.
No, I'm pretty sure that a lot of that isn't allowed.
Of course, it's not.
They're actually running a business.
Sorry?
They're actually running a business.
No. Well, he does. The boyfriend does wash cars for money, using our communal tap and washing the cars in the street. But he's making swords from what we can gather. He has a gas bottle in this new structure, which I don't think he should have.
No.
Because when I inquired about putting up a summer house, because it's a shared garden, we would need to bring in building regs. They have 3 hats, which, okay, 2 of them have now been up perhaps more than 10 years, so I don't see the council tackling that one. But the one with all the equipment in it and an extension cable from their house across a communal path with no protection to say beware of cable, I think is a challenge.
Definitely.
Can I jump in on that one and say, you know, you could speak to environmental health.
Well, I have done, Annie.
And do they help?
I encouraged our tenant, and I wrote to the council to say we have this issue with an owner who has, their actions have caused air pollution in our well-maintained, registered, happy 8.5 years tenancy. And they then put us onto environmental health, who said if it gets bad during 9 to 5 office hours, then he would come out. But of course, it's not during office hours, because to be fair to the couple, they are working. But on days off, they will smoke pot all day with their windows closed. And they're also, their dog gets out for 4 minutes. It's quite interesting. She bangs the doors all the time when she goes out. So you can hear her go out and then 4 minutes later, doors bang again. So you hear them come in. But the dog must be being poisoned by the pot smoking because there's no windows open.
Animal welfare. Is that a call?
Well, I'm not prepared to take any action at all, Brian, until I'm pretty sure I've got them, if you like, on all counts. Because I want to live here.
Sure. Yeah.
I was
they're
actually
very quiet. They don't have parties. There's, you know, they're, from that point of view, they're terrific. But
I was actually thinking more about the gas and electricity being stored in the shed as being a hazard rather than the pot smoking.
Right.
And I'm not sure, Brian, how do you feel about almost threatening people, you know, opening a conversation with the kind of threat, you know, if we can't come to agreement with this, then I will do such and such. Is that a good opening ploy that brings people into these awkward conversations sometimes?
I only ever would suggest having a lawyer involved to make that conversation so that
I did say, well, unfortunately, our tenant's very unhappy. She's going to write to the council. And I was told that's fine, and there was a shrug of the shoulders. So what?
Yeah.
This is a girl who has knocked on my door to ask me to help break down her door because she forgot her house keys. So the only person she could ask for a screwdriver was me.
Right. Wow.
Anyway, that's another story. So I mean, it's epic. It
sounds like it. Yeah, it sounds like some place to live.
Well, personally, I will try and avoid meeting them now. That's how I avoid it. I mean, I do the garden. I will use your bit, Brian. I will always say, oh, it's lovely today, or a good drying day. I don't have any confrontation now at all. Yeah.
See, that's it. In Scotland, we're spoiled because the weather changes every 15 minutes. So we can have another conversation within 15 minutes afterwards.
Yeah. Well, when I put my washing out, I'll say, "Oh, it's a free heat day, hurrah!" sort of thing. But then she's not out much. The dog gets out maybe 3 times a day for 4 minutes, and that's it.
And those marks in the grass, you never get rid of them.
No, I gave her some washing up liquid, and I said, I've read that this will dilute. If you squeeze this onto the pee after the dog's peed, she never did it. No. I found what I thought was their dog poo in the garden, probably cat poo. And they told me categorically they had to take the dog to the park to poo because it wouldn't poo in the garden. It now only gets to the garden. So only poos in the garden, but they do pick it up. Not every time, but they do pick it up most of the time. He doesn't, she does.
Yeah. Oh. Wow, that sounds like a series for STV.
Yes.
Doesn't it? Yeah. Laura, you might yet star in that.
I'm trying everything. I was so excited when somebody put a for sale sign up. I thought, yes, they're leaving, but they put it up at the wrong house.
Oh.
Brian, I could maybe just come back with an assertive story that someone, I've actually heard people do this, and this fits Elaine's situation. But it was somebody who owned a flat in a tenement, and they had a couple of landlords, some who were very helpful, one who really wasn't. And they kept writing and they kept getting blanked, as is your situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then that landlord put their property up for sale, as is your situation. So this couple plastered the close. They even plastered their own cars and the parking meter with signs saying, this property needs this much repair. And they put the figures and they put all the details. And the landlord who was trying to sell very quickly came round to see them. And they decided not to enter into any conversation whatsoever. They just left those signs up. They ended up getting someone buying who understood that repairs were needed. They budgeted accordingly in the price that they paid for the flat. And they have been the best neighbours at carrying out repairs that this couple ever had.
Oh, wow.
So you get into the poster business.
Just too late. He got enough. Well, I went to look and have a look to see whether I would buy it, and I just didn't want the headache again. And then it flooded my flat with a lead pipe. And I gave him an idea of how much everything would cost, but I never thought of putting it out on the alleyway for all the visitors.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, brilliant.
I mean that is being assertive. It wasn't much of a conversation, but it was certainly being assertive.
What's Brian saying to that?
Good on him. Good on him. Yeah.
Can I put a poster up in the window that the smell of pot is not from my flat? It's not my dog.
I think this worked particularly because they were trying to sell, and it did incentivize in many ways because it was around the cash situation.
Yeah.
You know, that landlord was really trying to get rid of that property. And here was somebody coming along, making it very clear and assertively just what they needed out of something, which was an owner who was going to actually pay up for repairs. You know, so
you could put a sign up saying plant sale, get your pots here.
Oh, they're not growing it, it's all right. We had our gutters cleaned and Veluxes cleaned last year. I got that checked.
Well insulated roof, yes.
Yes. No, they've got Veluxes in the roof. They've got 3 of them, so he could have he cleans the gullies around the Veluxes. So
if everybody goes to get their pot there, they might get fed up of it and then give it up.
No, they do. As I said, they're very quiet. They don't have any visitors. So, you know, they're exemplary neighbours from that point of view. It's just the crafts and hobbies, the dog, the motorbike and the pot.
Yeah. But as I say, I'm concerned the fact that there's cylinders, electricity and...
No, it's just an electricity cable. We cheer when the extension cable, they leave it out all night and then it gets wet. That's great, because then they can't use it again. They have to buy another one.
Yeah. You take pleasure at that, don't you, Laura?
Yes. I haven't done anything. They put it out the window across the path all the way down the garden to the shed. So it's probably actually far too far extended, quite frankly.
Yeah. You're just,
I haven't had to
you're
do
just quietly doing a rain dance.
Yes.
Doing it.
Well, you said yourself, Brian, weather changes every 5 minutes.
Absolutely.
Rain at night is my favourite.
Yeah.
So do you have an opposite to a sugar sheet?
Yeah, good idea to have the sugar sheet. Yeah.
But do you have an opposite to it?
I know. Do you?
No. I know, I don't intend to know. I just wondered if there was an alternative.
Yeah. Lauren, any final questions?
No, I think what you said was really helpful. I think the biggest point I took from your answer actually was just kind of going with the reason behind it.
Yeah.
So because I think, especially when I deal with numbers, a lot of the times I like to approach it just very factually. But actually, it's hard to engage with some people when you're just talking in numbers, you know.
Yeah.
You kind of need to have that emotion there. So, yeah, no, I like that a lot. And just the listening aspect too.
Yeah.
I
I
think
mean,
a lot of the conversations I have with people, you don't always get that opportunity to kind of get to know the other person.
Yeah.
Especially at the moment, a lot of it just tends to be over email. But I think just trying to maybe find a few more ways that I can get that in there.
Yeah. I mean, you're very young, Lauren, and you know, I always think that good judgment comes from experience, but experience comes from bad judgment. It's when things don't turn out the way you expected them that you should learn a lesson from it. And you know, too many people, if thing turns out the way expected it, they just think that's great. But people, I find, when things go wrong, they don't reflect back on what went wrong, why did it go wrong, what would I do differently in the next time. And as I say, you're young enough to take on board that lesson, that when you have a bad experience, you go back to it and you do a bit of self-reflection. You think, okay, what was the things that I did get a result out of? So I'll keep them and I'll do them again. But the things that I did that didn't get a result, what would I do differently next time?
Mm-hmm.
When getting to know our two tenants, who initially were, I think, had not had great experiences with their previous landlords, I found that a rapid response time and a smiley voice, which even in my own life, you can tell if somebody's phone.
You can tell over the phone, can't you? Yeah, you can tell when somebody's smiling. You can tell when they're unhappy.
So just the smiley voice, Lauren, when you're speaking to people, I think is a huge help to get as an icebreaker.
Yeah, to get people on board. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to leave you with my ABC. It's not anything but Chardonnay. ABC is, and it's probably very suitable for the position that you're in just now, is assume nothing, believe nothing until you check everything. Yeah. And always, you know, if you're going to take any sort of action, don't make assumptions. Don't just take it as, you know, it's a belief, it's a truth. Check it out and make sure that you check everything that you can.